The fourth golden rule is in all negotiations, you want to design and offer a concession strategy. The issue is, what do you do with regard to timing, speed, and size of offers and concessions? And the first thing you want to do is, in almost all instances, you want to recognize concession dynamics. What do I mean? There are certain concession patterns in almost every negotiation, and you need to recognize and understand what those are in order for you to most effectively design your own offer concession strategy. For instance, at the beginning of most negotiations, we tend to start out with large and far apart offers and concessions. And at the end, we tend to make smaller movements within a much shorter time frame. So at the beginning, they make an offer, you make a counteroffer, you are probably farther apart at the beginning than at any subsequent point in the negotiation. Then maybe 3 months later they move, then 2 months later you move, and you move in fairly large increments. Now at the end of the process, you tend to make smaller movements, and it's within a much shorter time frame. So it may be on the telephone, it may be on the courthouse steps, it may be at the closing. Boom, boom, boom. You're making relatively smaller moves in a much quicker, more condensed time frame. You also tend to, generally speaking, move toward the center of two opening offers. So for instance, if I start at 1 and you start at 10, where do you think we're ultimately going to end up? Regardless, oftentimes, of leverage and standards. Right around the middle. My question to you is, why? Why do we tend to move toward the middle? I think it has to do with the fact that our perception is, if you move the same amount that I move, somehow that means it's inherently fair and reasonable. And what that suggests is that we define success by how far the other side moves, by how far we get the other side to move. And that's something that we need to take into consideration in designing our own offer concession strategy, because in contexts where the patterns are that they move this amount and I move this amount, I need to make sure that I've built in enough room to move so that they can say at the end of the process that they got a fair and reasonable result. There's also a concept called bracketing. And what that means is that if I start at 1, you can bracket me and create the center. Okay? By going second, you've got an advantage because you create the center. If I start at 1 and you go to 10, you've created the center at 5.5. If I start at 1 and you go to 5, you've created the center at 3. You have an advantage because you create the center by going second. There's also a concept called tapering. What that means is that in your moves, you want to make smaller and smaller moves. So, I start at 10 million, I move to 9 million, I move to 8.5. I just have moved $1 million and then 500,000. And then I want to move by less than 500,000. I want to taper my offers and concessions so that the signal I am sending you with my offer concession strategies is I'm getting closer and closer to my endpoint. Because if I move $1 million, then another million, then another million, then if I was on the other side, I would move in really, really small increments and keep going. You know, you are setting up a pattern of moving in $1 million increments, and so I want to get you to keep moving as long as I can. I'm going to move in really, really small increments as long as you move in those larger increments.